I'm the Rasta Witch. Here's where we learn the way of the Yansui Rasta, which is to say, my kind of Ital. Please subscribe and begin your own kind of Yansui witchcraft. All roads lead to Rome. Home. Okay, this video, I'm going to start by telling the story of the Rastafarians, of the Rastas. So instead of in the past, I've just tried to just tell the whole thing all in one video, but I'm gonna do this in in little like things, like little parts, And this part is about slavery, about where it comes from. So kind of like to start out with the kind of like the objective or the thesis statement, like the nutshell. Basically, black man, and during the days of slavery, black people's culture and religion was stolen from them, and so there came a point where they were free enough to have time to think about things more, and wanted to know, what their religion was. What was this that was stolen from them, And so Rasta is an attempt, and there's many attempts to get to fill in those gaps and to find to answer those questions. Okay, so that's why we start here. So we need to start the story by kind of like explaining the background of the first Rastafarians before Rasta even existed, really. So every religion that there is, no religion says we started in 1925, and no religion thinks that they start at a certain time, because religions believe that they're connected to the Creator, which has always existed. So they believe that what they're calling their theology has always existed too. But looking at there's theology, and there's looking at things from more of a historical perspective, where you can document it, like Bart Ehrman gives a good example where he explains how, it's not what my grandpa or my great grandpa ate for breakfast on his 15th birthday is not a historical fact, because it's not written down. We don't know. We'll never know what he ate for breakfast that day. He ate something, but we don't know what it is. Therefore, it's not history, History is the story that we can tell, but there's many different ways to tell what's happened. Archaeology isn't history, and things like that. Geology and like the different things that we can look at, even anthropology, and things like that. But so this is like looking at it historically. We're gonna start with, I think the story starts probably around 1415. So in 1415, the Europeans were realizing that the Chinese had stuff called gunpowder, and they had their problems, and they brought gunpowder to Europe. Like maybe a famous moment like with Marco Polo, but there's Marco Polo's maybe not the first. I'm not like, when I try to research it, there's like I get different names and stuff. I think maybe we don't really know the exact moment gunpowder went to Europe. Maybe it happened in lots of different ways. I'm not really sure. It's not important to what I'm saying right now. Just like around that time, around 1415, gunpowder was coming into Europe, and they were inventing, and the gun was becoming invented. As soon as the gun was invented in a weapon, that changes war, because obviously a gun is quite superior. Before guns, the most superior thing would be, a really good sword, or even better yet, a really good spear, because a spear you can get them from far away, and things like that. Bow and arrows. and things like that. But a gun is quite a bit better than all of those things, even primitive guns, you know. So guns and then cannons and this type of thing completely changes everything. So the story starts there because that's how white man did it. That's how the European came to enslave um, the black Africans in the transatlantic slave trade. So a next crucial moment is Prince Henry the Navigator from Portugal. Henry the Navigator goes to Africa. So slavery already existed in Africa. So ancient slavery is different than the slave. When we talk about the days of slavery, ancient slavery is different. The slavery, the story I'm telling is a racial thing. You know, the people of the black colored skin are the slaves. You know, and the people of the white color. It's about race, but racism, like in Africa, there weren't white people. Everybody was black. It's before it was more of a like a class thing. You know, like a lower class status that a person can be, and in some cases they can even work themselves out of it, you know. So okay, so that and then the next crucial moment is so basically Henry the Navigator starts bringing black African slaves. I say black African because like I want to just say Africans, you know. But there's a lot of people that say some Africans are white and stupid things like that, you know. Um, so from here on out, I'll just say Africans, and you'll know what I mean, you know. People poison the water, you know. Um, so started bringing Africans to America, and they started being slaves. So black people were slaves in Europe first, and then pretty soon the Spanish did the most crucial thing. The real moment that it really started was when the Spanish started selling what they called asientos. An asiento is a seat, you know, but really an asiento was a license for one slave. Like if you had a boat and you bought 50 asientos, that means you could buy 50 slaves, you know, 50 seats, you know. Kind of like if you have a car that has 10 seats in it, you can seat 10 people type thing, you know. So the Spanish invented the profession of slavery. And then then that started happening. Then you know, Christopher Columbus wasn't the person that invented or that found America. That used to be a big thing. He wasn't, but now I think everybody knows that. So I won't go into detail about that. Africans went to America centuries before Christopher Columbus. You know, so you know, and then obviously the Native Americans were there. They came across the Bering Strait. So you know, both Native Americans and black people were there centuries before white people. It's just like and even with white people, the Vikings, you know, the name America comes from America. The name America comes from the Italian explorer Amerigo Vespucci, something like that founded South America. And so we started becoming aware of South America. So then we know the story that that America starts coming there. They enslaved the Native Americans first because those are the ones that are over there and they already know about slavery. They start enslaving the Native Americans, but the Native Americans or the Europeans are so foreign to them that they get sick. They keep getting diseases and dying, and so they didn't make good slaves. So they started bringing over the Africans and made them the slaves, and so then it turned into a different. And so you know, so the Spanish, so everybody's guilty. You know, the Dutch, the Spanish, the French, like everybody in Europe. But by far the British, you know, all added up, you know, now that it's all done and said, the British would be the ones that did the largest quantity and the the worst, the worst of the worst was the British. But nobody else can say, yeah, at least I'm not British. There's just no good guys in this story, except the innocent Africans. And the people, some people try to say, well, they had slavery before, so they're not innocent. That's ridiculous. I'm not even going to go there because that's just too stupid. That's just a dumb guess. That's just a stupid thing to say. I already went over that. It wasn't the same thing. Okay, so now it becomes this thing. We've got this new place, America. We're trying to make it a new country and everything. We're using slave labor, and it's the Africans. So Jamaica becomes a significant place because it becomes the hub. When they take the Africans from Africa, they would take them to Jamaica, and they would clean them and oil them up so their skin looks all shiny, and and a lot of them would die. Like it was just like going from Africa to Jamaica was a really hard trip, and most of them would die. But the ones that would live, they'd line them up, and then they would sell them and decide where they're going to go. It was called the hub. It was the hub where they would all go before they would decide whether you're going to go to South America, you're going to go to Connecticut, you're going to go to Massachusetts, you're going to go down to Alabama, you're going to, or whatever. Don't quote me, hey, Connecticut wasn't a state yet or whatever. I haven't given a year. It's not relevant. So the main thing that I wanted to establish is just a real basic concept of slavery so that you could understand that Jamaica was a significant place. So before a white man came to Jamaica, Christopher Columbus, there was Native Americans that already lived there called the Arawak Indians, and they just killed every single one of them. Today there's no Arawak Indians. They just said, we want this island, killed every single Arawak Indian, dead, gone. Didn't leave any around, and just took over the island, made it the hub of slavery, and so obviously sugarcane, would be a big thing, would raise sugar, but it wasn't just the hub, but there was also a lot of slaves there, and so now we're going to fast forward to the 1920s. I'm not going to go into so the British realized that as many white people as black people are dying. How I said it was a horrible trip. The white people were dying, having all kinds of problems too. I think that's like maybe one of the more, the big motivators to abolishing slavery. But the British did it first, then a year later the Americans followed suit. In fact, I listened to audio books in the morning, by the way. Did you know that there's many audio books on YouTube? The story of Mary Prince, and there's just many autobiographies of that slaves have done that now you can listen to for free, full audiobooks on YouTube. The one I just listened to is Abraham Lincoln and the Abolition of Slavery in the United States, and that goes over that. It doesn't mention anything about the British doing it first. But anyway, so now that the slavery was abolished, then way later comes the 1920s, and that's where we need to be going now. So this has already taken too long. So slavery is a horrible thing, too horrible. It's just like they say. They tried so they had Bibles just for the slaves. It wasn't like everybody else had like the King James Bible, but they wouldn't give the slaves the full King James Bible. They made a special version that had anything that the slaves could use to empower themselves or defend their case. They took those verses out and made a Bible just for the slaves, which was just pieces of it, and gave that to them, and forced them to be Christian. And forced is an understatement. Everything about it was forced. And they say that the white man's thing was that they were meant to be enslaved, because the Bible does encourage slavery, and they saw black people as like animals, as lower than humans. But I don't believe, that's not true, because like I said, I study these things. At this point, the number is pretty outstanding. All the books I've read and stuff about this, and they were. The truth is, they were treated much lower than animals. Any animal would be treated much better than slaves were treated. So therefore, just there's nothing innocent about white man's perspective. But the Bible said there's just no defending it. It was evil, horrible, and just filthy, terrible, horrible. So anyway, in the 1920s in Jamaica, most people were black. Black were in like 90% or something black people on the island, and there was this effort, like I said, to try to understand the past, and there was something called Ethiopianism. So in the Bible, look, I have a thing. See this right here? It says Ethiopia in the Bible. See? Those are some verses. Ethiopia is in the Bible. Ethiopia is in the Bible. Ethiopianism is kind of like adding everything up that you can get from the Bible to just history and just anything about the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and just Ethiopian history and stuff. I read a book called Ethiopia and the Bible, I think it was called. It was a big, thick book, and it just went over all the different kings of a 3,000-year-old dynasty in a bunch of detail and stuff, and it was pretty interesting. At first, I wasn't sure what to study, so I just studied everything, you know. But, so Ethiopianism existed, okay? And there was someone named Marcus Garvey. So if you've ever seen or read the autobiography of Malcolm X, or watched the movie about Malcolm X, or studied Malcolm X, the story of Malcolm X starts out by explaining that his dad was a Garveyite, which is someone that follows the teachings of Marcus Garvey. Of course, that's in Africa, that's in America. But Marcus Garvey was from so the Marcus Garvey story is like the 1920s, where we are right now. So Marcus Garvey was a Jamaican, and he noticed all these things and how oppressed the black man was, and he had a dream to build up the black man. He went to England and got some college education, came back to Jamaica and became the general and leader of he loves Napoleon, so he dresses like Napoleon. He wears like a Napoleon hat and everything, and that might ring a bell if you're not sure who he is. But he starts the UNIA, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which became, as last I heard, until today, there's many organizations of black people. The UNIA, the last I heard, is still the record for the largest organization of black people, for black people of all time, worldwide. It was very successful, and he was the leader of it. He wrote hymns and songs and prayers. Some favorite books of mine. My favorite book was by Marcus Garvey, was called Life and Lessons, because his program was, he believed in what was called the self-made man, and his teaching was that to obey the law, to fight not to fight the police, but to fight in court, to get educated. To read a chapter of the Bible a day, especially Psalms and Proverbs, to have good hygiene, to invest your money in your clothes, and your image, no matter how poor you are. That's your priority. He was influenced by Dale Carnegie, so he had a lot of like those kind of ideas in his head, and he wrote plays. So probably an even more famous book that was also good. I already told you about my favorite one. The one I just said, it's a thick book. You'll go, whoa, I can tell if it's a big, thick book of Marcus Garvey giving advice. You know, don't always have liquor in your house, but never drink some, because you can get your guests drunk, but don't get drunk yourself. You'll make a fool of yourself. And all kinds of details about advice on how to live your life and save up money and blah, blah, blah. Cool stuff. Incredible advice. Great guy. you really learn to fall in love with Marcus Garvey. Another one written by his wife, Amy Jacques Garvey, called Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey is really good. That one goes into more detail about his legal troubles. Babylon finally got to him, and it describes how he is innocent. Both those books are really good. So those are the ones I recommend. The Philosophy and Opinions one is probably a little bit easier to find. They're both good. There's also documentaries. There's a free one on YouTube. So Marcus Garvey is like, if you study him, notice it's the Rastafarians are the ones that tell you about him. Marcus Garvey kind of wrote the manual for black freedom fighters for everyone after that. Everybody, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, all these black freedom fighters, they all would have used the teachings of Marcus Garvey, and either them or their parents would have been Garveyites. And then Marcus Garvey he said, look for me in the whirlwind, just like wherever there would be a black liberator, he had something to do with building them up there, and that's true. So anyway, so he encouraged Ethiopianism, and so he didn't invent it, but he encouraged it and really pointed the finger at Africa, to Ethiopia specifically, and the Bible. Christianity's been in Ethiopia longer than Europe. So they started calling him the Black Moses. So I had to think, like, where do I cut this off? I'm not going to go into it starts branching off into different directions. This isn't going to be about this. They started seeing Marcus Garvey as calling him the Black Moses. He started becoming more than just a political and social leader and a financial guide and things like that. And it started getting more and more religious. And he wrote a play called When a Black King and Queen Will Be Crowned in Africa in 1929. And of course, in 1930, 1 year later, Haile Selassie was crowned, and his wife, the Queen Menon, King and Queen of Africa. So some of the followers took that as all prophecy from the Black Moses. And the Exodus, like Bob Marley's song, Exodus, So, some things to notice. We got the black Muslims. Not everybody turned out Rastafarians. Some of the black people became black Muslims. They said, forget Christianity and all that stuff. If you've seen the movie about Muhammad Ali and the black Muslims. So some of them went that direction. Some of them became Rastafarians. If you study Marcus Garvey, notice it's always Rastafarians did the introduction of the book and everything. The Rastafarians are the ones that are really, here I am giving this video, we're the ones that really insist on us not forgetting about the forgotten hero, Marcus Garvey, which is completely relevant. And we love him. So there would be other branches, like people. Basically, this video needs to end with just that Marcus Garvey finally got things going in a good direction. The Titanic, if you watch that show, was the White Star ship. It was one of the ships of the White Star ship line. Marcus Garvey started the Black Star ship line, which was a ship line that was all ran by black people, and then there became legal problems, and that's where the legal problems I mentioned too early came from, and it didn't turn out to be successful. But there was, there was attempts by Marcus Garvey himself and everybody in the black people world too. He gave a giant parade in New York, and everybody, it's just black people everywhere were super excited about it. And so it was just something that was very built up. And it kind of ends on the note of what does it all mean, and it branches off into different meanings. One of those branches was Rastafarianism. So I probably should end there. So we'll end the story on the play in 1929, and then on Haile Selassie being crowned emperor in 1930. So we end on 1930. And so that's the first thing to mention.